Welcome to Stories Worth Hearing. I'm your host, John Quick. For 30 years, John Lee Bishop was the pastor of a megachurch of more than 5,000 people. He spoke at Christian events across the world, published widely read books, and became a leading figure in ministry. But his journey took a shocking turn. John became entangled with a cartel, smuggled drugs, and served time in federal prison. His life has included everything from backyard fight clubs to wild animals in his sermons, to dangerous encounters that sound more like a novel than real life. He shared it all in his book, The Church of Living Dangerously, published by HarperCollins, one of the largest publishers in America. And today's guest has a story so unbelievable that Hollywood is already bringing it to the big screen. Actor Christian Bale has bought the rights to his life story and is making a major motion picture about it. This is John Lee Bishop, and this is a story worth hearing.
Well, John, welcome to the show. I'm super excited you're on today.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm excited to be on. Really appreciate you.
Well, this will be really fun. I think this will be very interesting for my audience to hear. Your story is one of the craziest, coolest stories that I've come across. We were chatting yesterday, and, I've done, 450 podcasts where I'm the host, and I've produced another 500 episodes. And this is one of those stories that is like top 10, sticks out to me, like just in a inspirational way, and we'll kind of unpack that here in the next 45 minutes. But my first question to you is this, John. Let's take people back to kind of some of the origins of this. You were at one time a mega church pastor. Talk to me about what led you to become a pastor in the first place.
Oh, great question. So I never went to church growing up. My wife was a strong Christian and I wasn't, but I was in love with her. So I was the typical guy to say, I'll go to church because she said to go to church. And I was also in the book of Matthew, it says there are people that say, Lord, Lord, and they live their life thinking they knew God. I would have been one of those guys because I went to church, prayed a prayer, and walked down an aisle. And yet from 21 to 25, I never lived. I never thought about it. I never questioned. And I had a martial arts accident that I almost died, lost 5 pints of blood. And that was the moment laying in the hospital when the doctor told my wife, I think he's going to die. That is literally the moment that got my attention to say what would happen after I died. So I became a Christ follower, asked Jesus into my heart. I hit the ground running. I was trying to go to Lewis and Clark Law School, and I got a business bachelor's degree, and I really wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer and felt like I could have done a good job. I mean, a lot of things I did were along those lines, and I love to argue and debate. So I thought, perfect. And I changed courses, man. And I went to seminary, ended up with a master's degree in leadership and theology. And there was just I know a lot of people read the book, Burn the Boats. And that was what happened to me. Like when I realized that God was real, that Jesus was him, that he died for me, I had there was no turning back, Jonathan. For me, I was all in. So I was working out at church, and the pastor was the one who ended up in my book, Neil Curtis, and we were great friends. He led me to Christ. He was, man, such a great guy. He is a great guy. I don't want to say such he was, like past tense. He is a great guy. We don't necessarily talk a lot, but at the end of the day, I felt this leading, and what happened was I knew that I was an evangelist, and I sort of was like, well, I'll be the next Billy Graham. He's going to retire someday. And this was in 95. I went to the Portland Crusade, and at that crusade, I shook his hand. It was like a flash. Was he shaking 150 people's hands? One of those. And I felt like that was my destiny. And then I had to start a church. I just knew beyond any doubt, beyond any shadow of any doubt that that was what I had to do. So we started, and we, in my house, grew, and we were in a little grange in the Northwest. They have these, they call them a grange, but it's like farmers gather. So we met there for 3 years, grew, went to a high school. We kept growing. And then we ended up we merged with a church that had 15 acres. And at that point, that was in early 2000s, we exploded to the point the bank said the church held 600 people, and we were doing at one point 6 services regularly for years. And the church wouldn't loan us money because they called it catastrophic growth. So that we had grown so fast. So from there, I just wanted to see more people that were like me. I would go to churches and sit in the back row. I'd make fun of the pastor. I would, I'd say he's disingenuous. It's a bunch of BS, whatever. And it just was not into it at all. I wanted to be the church that was not like that. I didn't want to wear a suit on Sunday because I didn't wear a suit any time of the week. Why would I wear a suit on Sunday? So I approached everything from a complete different vantage point and perspective. And the intent was not to compete with other churches. The intent was not to have people from the community come to our church. I asked people to leave in the earliest couple of years if they were from another church. I said, no, we really go back. And so God blessed us, Jonathan, and we were running thousands of people at what is called the Rush Prairie Church that we merged with, Living Hope. And then we ended up at a mall, which was a fantastic location. We were in a Mervyn's, and we grew more there. And we were, I don't know, man. I mean, people don't go to church every weekend. Back then, about every 2 to 3, 4 weekends. Now it's like 1 in every 6 weekends. So we're running thousands, and we would have, but the mall, a Mervyn store was, man, we just hit the jackpot. It had been empty for 4 years. We ended up there for 9 months, and they sold to a movie theater. So then we moved to the Kmart, and at the same time, I'm burning the candle at both ends, speaking in places around the world, friends in Australia, friends in Korea, different places. And I spoke at Hillsong, loved Brian, loved Bobby and their whole team. And to just be honest, man, I look back and I had an affair, and I'm not proud of it. And my wife is the one that suffered the most because of it, and my kids. And out of stress, and I had never drank a beer until I was in my 40s, not one time. All of a sudden, I'm drinking, and it's sort of like it's numbing me from the temptations of other things. It's knowing that emotionally I was just too close to this person, and drinking was my way out. And it became, I would say drinking was more the mistress, to be just honest. And I failed. And when I went to the church and told them, and the part that just, it grieved my heart until 2 months ago that we talked about, they fired me. They locked the doors. They cut off everything, communication. We couldn't come to the building. The very church I started 20 years earlier, I couldn't even enter the building without security escort. And they threw everything away, like research and just all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I would say that to use a Rambo term, I drew first blood, man. I mean, I did. I made a mistake, a big one, a really big one. But there was no path of restoration.
Yeah.
And in the Bible, it's clear. I would say the Bible cover to cover is all about restoration.
Oh yeah. The whole thing is about redemption.
Yeah. And I didn't get it. And we were the church, man, that everyone would bring their friends to. Even if they went to the Baptist church down the road, they would come to our church and say, this is a church you'll find faith in Christ in. So we would do spontaneous baptisms. At that time, no other church was doing them. We started it on Easter weekend, and it was an accident. The pastor lost the list. And he hand wrote the list. I'm like, how do you handwrite a list? Do you not have a computer? And he loses the list. And so there were 60 people. And I felt God say, get in the pool. I get in the pool, and people got saved. And in their clothes on that day, 307 or something people got baptized in one day. That just started a trend of spontaneous baptisms. And we do them in the small church I'm at now. But that happened, and something broke in me, and I don't know. I suppose I'll be in therapy the rest of my life to find out, like, what broke in you to the point you needed to go now be with the most dangerous criminal organization on the planet.
Before we go there, let's go. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, most people have small circles of friends, even, small circles of influence. You were in a place where you had, 5,000 people come into your church. You're getting invited to speak all over the globe, getting praise from lots of folks, writing Christian books that were popular in the leadership network. What was that like? How was that to go from, you know, church in your living room to all of a sudden you have thousands of people looking up to you for answers? Was it too much? Was it kind of fun? Was it tell me a little bit about what that was like for you.
Okay, sure. So that season where I got asked to write the very first book called Dangerous Church, it's still in publication today for Zondervan. It's now HarperCollins. We were studied by other churches. We were in the least church part of the country. I'm friends with Mark Driscoll, and we would do conferences together. And between our two churches, there was not a lot of what was happening in our church it was not happening anywhere else. So there was a lot of interest. And I would say the sort of, like people say, celebrity, whatever, however you want to word it. Yeah, it was intoxicating. I'm not going to lie. It was exciting to be asked to speak and then flown first class and spoke. One time I spoke 21 conferences in 23 days
Wow.
and in Australia. And it was exciting. It was something that I look back on and say, man, I don't know if I'd ever even want that kind of attention. You know what I mean? Like now, I would say the John Lee Bishop 2.0 is a different person than then. But I was intent, focused, determined. I mean, if it was drinking or growing a church or whatever I did, it was all in, all in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was when you're doing that many services, there's no time in between because cars got to get out of the parking lot. Figure a big box store like Kmart. So there was no time. What I lost looking back that I now have is I lost the connection with people. The very reason I started the church was to be around people and to hear their stories and to do the funerals at their family, someone died, or a wedding. And I was like the sermonator, like it was like, seriously, man, like you're just going wham and in an office and back. And so I think I let some of it go to my head.
Yeah.
And I don't
So
know if that's an abnormal thing or not, man, to be honest. I never heard the term megachurch,
yeah.
Jonathan, before I was starting a church.
So you go from everybody in the country wanting to figure out how you're running a mega church in one of the least church areas in the whole US to, you know, kicked out, leave the key as you leave, don't come back. Talk to me a little bit about that portion of your life. I know you wrote a book which we'll talk about here in a second, but that portion of your life, wandering through the desert or however you want to phrase it, what led you to do some of the things that, there's drugs and money and all those things in your book? Tell us a little bit about that time of your life.
Okay, so you used the illustration wilderness, and I would say, interestingly, I would say that the bondage that I experienced, like the Israelites in Egypt, was when I was at the megachurch. When I was fired, it was absolutely like the wilderness. God provided for me just like he did them, but it was everyone. To this day, I'm back in the same city I was in, and not one friend. Well, there's like 3 friends literally that went to the church, but as far as paid staff, pastors, not one in 2 years have contacted me, not one time. The only guy
Wow.
that I talked to is Pastor Glenn, and he's a good friend. He's one of these guys. He came to our church one time and he said, "I just want to tell the world, if you love John Bishop, then I love you. If you hate John Bishop, then I hate you." And I'm like, whoa, I don't know if he should have said that, but besides him, man, it's like, it was shocking. It was eye-opening. It was sad. I was like, F the church,
Yeah.
not God. There was never in my point in my life, in prison and everything else, not one single time did I feel God has abandoned me, or did I feel I've lost my salvation. Even when I was running with even when I was having a barbecue with the Sicarios, literally 16 guys that kill people, I never felt like Jesus was out of my life, or I just was running. I was the prodigal son. I was the guy. The prodigal son was still the son, but he ran.
Yeah.
He left, and that was me. I was the prodigal, and I think part of the disenchantment I had was it was disgusting to see the church respond, not church, not people, leadership, whitewashed tombs, empty hearts, open. They had mouths full of the right words and hearts empty. Because if you have the gospel in your heart, and you will kick a pastor out of his own church that he started. No, it's not my church, it's God's. But if you have the audacity to literally fire someone, change the locks, cut them off. My middle daughter had 2 kids, and we were going to, they were living in a church-owned mobile home, and they kicked her out 2 days before Christmas. So it was so hateful that I felt like that woman must have felt in John 8, pulled out naked. And just a crowd gets around you, man, and they want to throw rocks. And I don't have any ill feelings in my heart. I know where I'm at with God, and I know that I'm forgiven. And Jonathan, what happened 2 months ago, if you want to talk about that at some point in this conversation, that's where freedom happened.
Yeah.
Because I lived with shame, and man, because the Colombian local paper lied about me. They said stuff that was not true. Nobody will recant the words. There was never money stolen. Never, never. The FBI, all these people were involved, and they were trying to find a reason to hem me up before I put myself in prison. And there was nothing, man. And so I asked the pastor, I said, why don't you make it right? The pastor now of the church. And I said, why don't you just make it right? He said, well, no one knows you. I'm like, you only have a few hundred people in the church now. I don't care if they know me. The rest of the city knows me. And when they think of me, they think that I was, like Bernie Madoff's like grandson or son or something. And that is not the case, man. I struggled with a lot of resentment, a lot of anger. I grew up, because you read the book, you handle everything physically. And I'll do it, man, toe to toe with, I don't care. Even if I'm going to get beat up, I'm still coming. And it didn't matter to me. And that's probably what helped me get through prison, to be just honest.
Yeah.
But I don't have that now. I feel like God has freed me in a way that's unexplainable and undeniable at the same time, because shame, my guilt of what I did, they've pointed. And for your audience, I would say, if it's okay, one thing: no one can make a person feel more guilty than they already feel for what they've done wrong. So the more stones you throw at me will not hurt me worse. The words you say will not hurt me worse. But the Bible says words are life and death. And all I've heard is words bad about me. People will say, I'll say online, literally on a message, I'll say, if you have a problem with me and you want to talk, I'm here. 2410 Grand Boulevard, right here on the corner, right downtown. Come and talk.
Yeah.
But talk to me, not talk about me. Because that's just being a chicken. That's just being immature. And I have other words that I won't say, but I get frustrated about it, man, because if we're Christians, we're called to we're not called to higher measurement in standards. We're called to love everyone like we love ourselves. We're called to be the Good Samaritan. I mean, Jesus he died at a time where women were treated so horribly, and children were too, in Rome especially. And history tells us that the early Christians literally changed the fabric of the city, of Rome especially. And I'm like, why aren't we changing that? Why is it that people don't go to church? And it's exactly that, because of guys like me. And I could go right down the list of megachurch guys that have just been thrown out, man. And I wish for different, but it's going to take repentance on the part of leaders in churches, because I don't know what else is going to change the church. And I'm sorry, I got off on a preaching episode. You can edit.
It's all right. So you go to federal prison. And my guess is that was a hard thing to go through. Talk to me a little bit about what it was like, and coming out of that, and then deciding to write a book. What spurred you on to wanting to kind of tell your story and be the one to tell it, as opposed to having somebody else tell for you?
Yeah. Can I add one pretext?
Yeah.
So I did this road trip with my son, and because of the movie that My Life Rights are owned by Christian Bale, and there's going to be a movie, but there's part of the story that I was serving thousands of people in a dozen or more countries, And my own son is addicted to, at the time, heroin. And there was something in me that I walked out in the garage when we had like a library, and he was there, and I walked in and he was like half as, nodded off. And I just felt this, I felt an ache in my heart that I've never really talked about, that I have helped thousands of people, but I haven't helped my own son.
Mm.
And when he was in between drug usage, I said, David, let's go on a road trip. And we went. And then I met the cartel, and then I worked for them. And I was the guy that was stupid enough to buy into all their dumb things. The only good saving grace, bro, is I didn't know what they're putting in the car, and they could have put anything in the car. Before I was arrested, I didn't even think about it. Like, woo, smart. I was a dumb criminal. But the day that I got stopped at the border at San Ysidro, and the day that they took crowbars to the trunk, it was like my life flashed before my eyes, and a day that will stand in infamy for me, because I was like, what the hell was I doing?
Mm.
And I was on my knees, and I felt like that guy on the show Midnight Express, that old movie. That's what it felt like, man. There were guys with probably 5, 6 with automatic weapons trained on me. And I was put in a cell, and I wouldn't talk. And they gave me, for marijuana was the only thing ever the only thing that time for sure, but the only thing I believe ever. And they put me in federal prison and gave me a mandatory minimum sentence of 5 years. I served 4 of the 5. And prison was I was in 6 spots. I did okay, but you gotta play that. You gotta pay to play, man. So I had to, a couple fights and different scenarios where things you just have to do in prison, but you don't have to. But I'm not gonna let anybody. Respect was the only thing in prison that you could keep, because they take everything else from you. And so the respect that and the one guy told me, it's like, he kind of gave me the school. And I'll never forget, I think it's in the book, about Miss Ricky, was transgender, and she was in the middle of a transition or whatever, and she was at San Quentin and then sent to where I was at in San Diego. This is in my first 20 days in prison, and I was crying every day, bro. Like sobbing, crying everywhere. And I asked Miss Ricky to cut my hair, and I'm talking a big black person, I mean, yoked up like you can't believe. And she's cutting my hair. And I say, can I, do I call you Miss Ricky? She says, yeah, that's what I would call. And I'm like, okay, you got it. I'll call you anything you want, And she cut my hair, and she said, can I talk to you for a minute? I'm like, yeah. And she said, you got to stop crying. And I don't even remember what I said. And she said, you put yourself here, and you put your family on the outside, you put them in as much pain and suffering as you're going through. So stop being so self-centered and crying about where you're at, and put your big boy pants on and do your time. Stay in your lane and do your time. And that day I never cried again. Never. To this day, I actually have a hard time being honest with my emotions. Prison was an experience that I would never trade for anything, but it was also an experience that I would never wish on anyone. And when I got out, I was on an ankle monitor, and I lived in Yuma. I was in a halfway house, and I lived in Yuma, and I had to go every 2 weeks and do a UA. And that was about 6 months, I think. And then I went in, was doing a diesel repair business, and that was going really good. And mobile, not me as a mechanic, but I was like the middle guy connecting all the dots and stuff. And then we went on a camping trip, and I ended up in Vancouver, and got an email from a friend, like a dad, like I told you last night, Ron Webb, and he said, would you come and meet with me and another guy for lunch? I did. And I came down to this church, New Life, and the rest is history. Here I am. I mean,
So
it's
what
just
was that? What was the event or person, or take me back to the story where you contemplated writing your story down and making it into a book?
thank you for getting me back on track. I'm ADHD, so I can go off rabbit trails. So when I got out of prison, I signed my life rights to New Regency, and New Regency had a really strict contract. And at the time, I had a lawyer, but we had never met, and I didn't know what I was doing, so we signed it. But in the meantime, since then, I've met with Christian and my wife and I'm going to say 80 hours, 2 different times. We met for like a week, but like 10 hours a day. And super amazing guy. And he asked me why I had not written a book. And I said, well, I can't, because the contract said I couldn't. And he said, well, you can. I own your life rights. You should write a book. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, absolutely. So he's been really cool about it. And so I wrote the book with HarperCollins, and it's my story. It's the one time, if it never sells any copies, I got to be real, tell the truth, and put it out there for anyone to read.
That's awesome. Tell me a little bit about what's it been like meeting with Christian Bale, literally Batman, one of the biggest actors in the world, to have him find an interest in your story. What's that been like for you?
Surreal. Christian is so down to earth, wore like a white t-shirt and normal jeans, and when he come in, I'm expecting a Batman outfit, and he's going to be 7 foot tall, but he is just the most down to earth person. And we stayed in this hotel in Santa Monica, and what was funny about Christian is, so he's watching everything I do the whole time. Like, I didn't notice this till the second or third day, or first time. He's watching me, like, and I'm like, why is he watching me? Because he doesn't even call himself a method actor, but he is. And so he's watching how I do, and he'll ask my wife, like, how does he do this? And what about this? So one time, since I met with him the very first time, I've lost like almost 50 pounds. And thank you. But back then, I'm leaning down and I'm tying my shoe, but my fat gut is right there. Like, I couldn't get over it. And I'm tying my shoe on the side, right? And he's sitting there staring at me, like, looking at me like, and I'm like, what is he looking at? I'm trying to like, oh my gosh, it was like I need, I've crossed the point, man. I need slip-ons. Like when you're younger and your grandpa had them, and you're like, I'm not going to be my grandpa. I'm like, I'm that guy now, And I said, what are you laughing about? And Christian said, mate, I'm not laughing at you. I just, I played Dick Cheney in Veep. And I said, I had to gain like 40, 50 pounds or whatever it was. And I said, okay. He said, and it wasn't until I gained all that weight that I realized people overweight have to tie their shoe sideways. And I'm like, so from that point on, man, I'm like, I would tie my shoe in the front and I would do whatever I could to tie it. I mean, hold my breath and suck it in. And I'd send Christian a picture of my shoelaces and just laugh with him, So, but it's been amazing. Amazing. He has just been the best. And the second time he had my son David go and come to the interview, and David comes late. You remember the movie Risky Business? My son comes late to be with Christian Bale. Christian got him his own room with a balcony because my son smokes. My son walks in or knocks on the door, comes in the room with a robe on that's from the hotel. With no shoes, like just in socks, comes in, and I'm like, you've got to be joking me, son. What in the hell are you doing? And David he said, Christian could not stop laughing. Like, it was like David is so funny. He is so funny. And he's like, and they were talking, he's like, I bet a lot of people are impressed because you're Christian Bale, Batman. And he said, well, I don't know, man. And he's like, I'm not. He said, I'm not. I'm like, David, You don't have to say everything that you're thinking.
Yeah. You said the quiet part out loud. You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, that was the part you should have just not said. But he laughed and laughed and laughed about it. So it has been, the first time we met with him, it was just after our 40th anniversary, and we hadn't celebrated. And somehow in our text, we were just talking. We got there and there were 24 roses, and he got us a couples massage and all this stuff. And I mean, it's been one of the best parts of our journey. And I'm not gonna lie to you, there have been times where Christian has, he's talked to all my kids, and a couple times he's almost been like a safe person to share with. I mean, he's the one that brought up to me how I was fired. I was in Malibu Passages, California, the stepchild version in Ventura, not the one on the beach. And Christian's like, I mean, I think part of him can't believe that we were the church that would restore everyone, and then when it came to me, there was no grace.
Kick you to the curb.
Yeah, yep. And I don't know. I mean, it's not like we harp on it, it's part of the journey, and you have to come to the place if you're kicked out like I was. I had to reconcile, and it was in prison I read this book called Trusting God. Even with a seminary master's degree, I still had to believe, is God sovereign? Is he God in control of everything? Did this like slip through the crack? Or is God, and I came to the conclusion, he sent me to prison, God, that he's either in control of everything or absolutely nothing. There's just no in between. So I would ask myself, because I had a pretty good life, man, I would say I had a pretty decent life. We had a house in Cabo, and we weren't millionaires by a long way, but I was doing good, making good money and speaking, and I thought that I was doing ministry with my friends. And then, you know what? When you realize who really is your friend, it's when the shit comes into your life and falls apart, and who's standing with you then.
Yeah.
That's when you know who your friend is, or who your friends are.
Yeah.
And that's been probably because I grew up with such a dysfunctional family, my friends became my family, and I think it was a harder blow because of that. So I'm still a little bit dealing with, some of that, but I'm happy where life is at right now, happier than I ever was back then. And I say that, and Christian one time asked me, he's like, what does it feel like to be a church, like what you said, what thousands of people and all this, sort of popularity or whatever. How does it feel that now you're in a church of hundreds? And I said, no, that's not true. We have not even hit 100 yet. We're
not to the 100 mark yet. Yeah.
Yeah. I said, we're 100 if I count all the kids, the little tiny infants, or if someone's pregnant, give, an extra, but it's back to, there's a verse in the Bible that says, don't despise the small beginnings. The Lord rejoices when the work begins. Zechariah chapter 4, verse 4. That verse held me together when I first got to the church I'm at now, where God is not a respecter of numbers, and I don't know how to explain it without sounding disingenuous, except to say, I feel like I've got real friends now. It's a different feeling.
That's great. Can you give us, without, selling off any of the, ideas or whatever, we want to keep, whatever you need to keep secret, but can you tell us a little bit about kind of where the movie's at in the process, what, peek behind the curtain of kind of what that looks like, and what somebody could, what we could be looking for down the future? Is this like 10 years out, 2 years out? Where are you at kind of in the process? If you can share with us what you can share.
Yeah, I think I won't get in trouble for sharing a few things. Christian told my wife and I that he believes that this was going to be he believed. So he bought the rights to my movie. He is rewriting the screenplay, so it'll be him and Charles Randolph, who's an Oscar-winning screenwriter. So he's rewriting the screenplay. He's going to produce, and he's only, I think, produced one movie, actually not co-produced. And I believe, I've heard, not from him, but Christian doesn't talk a lot. It's like things you hear, but it's possible he this could be his directorial debut. He said to us, this could be the most important movie I've ever made in my life.
That's awesome.
And I don't know why. I mean, I really don't, man. Like,
Well,
I
the
feel pretty
story's
big.
phenomenal. It's like, for folks listening in, we're going to put the link to the book and to John's website into the description. Like, for folks
Right.
listening, go buy the book. It's like one of the most epic stories that you ever read. And it's like, we were talking yesterday, John, this is how I phrase it. This is not your words, but it's like the Pursuit of Happiness meets Wolf of Wall Street. And, and I think it's just a crazy story of somebody that can be kicked down but not destroyed and get back up again. And I think, for folks listening in, our 30 minutes here has gone by in a flash. There's going to be folks listening in, maybe they're discouraged, or maybe they're entrepreneurs and they've started a business that failed. What kind of encouragement would you give to them? Because you literally went from federal prison, that like real federal prison, to Christian Bale, one of the biggest movie stars in the world, buying your script, becoming friends with you, making it into a movie. So what would you tell the folks that, maybe discouraged in their own life right now and need some encouragement?
Well, I had to come to a place that I said, I'm not going to quit no matter what. Like, I believe, I always tell people chapter 12 is coming. In chapter 11 of the book of John, we see Lazarus, who Jesus was friends with, dies. And he's put in a tomb. And in that climate, in the desert, he's put in basically a cave. And Mary and Martha, his sisters, they're like, why didn't you come earlier? And the Bible says Jesus waited to come. He waited because he wanted to create that realization that you're human and you've got to trust me more. So when he comes finally, in the King James, it says I forget the exact verse, but in chapter 11, it says about Lazarus, after it was 4 days, it says, he stinketh. And I just like, it's kind of a funny statement, but Jesus raises it from the dead. And then he tells the rest of everyone, go take the grave cloths off of him. And this is what I believe, like one of my new favorite animals is elephants, because they can't lay down. If they lay down, their organs, if they lay down, they will eventually die. So when they're sick, other animals will come in the herd and they'll stand next to them and they'll hold them up. And you've got to, number one, have an attitude that you're just never going to quit, because in chapter 12, your chapter 12 is coming. If you're watching this, chapter 12, if you won't quit, is he's sitting with Jesus eating a meal with his two sisters. And we will never know the end of the story if we quit after failure. Failure should not and cannot define me. I just refuse to let failure be the final word. I want to just one day at a time reach one person that I can, encourage one person. We feed hundreds and hundreds of homeless people here. I want my life to make a difference in the simplest of ways. And in order to do that, I've got to get up out of bed. I've got to put my feet on the ground, and I've got to do what I got to do to get in the car, and go. One quick, can I share?
Yeah.
Elijah quit on God. Elijah was the most famous prophet in the world, probably in the Old Testament. Even Orthodox Jews would say this. Elijah saw miracles unlike probably most of the prophets. But it was because of someone's words, Jezebel's. If by this time tomorrow you're not dead, may the gods strike me dead. In 1 Kings chapter 18, it says Elijah ran first to Beersheba, and then he ran all the way to what we know as Mount Sinai. He runs the equivalent of about walks, goes away. I say run because he's going from God. So two things about this. One is he's running because of fear. And most of the time people quit. Right now you're quitting on your marriage. You're quitting at your job. You're quitting you have a dream. Like we have these dreams when we're kids, and then life beats the hell out of the dream, and we quit. And Elijah is quitting. In the middle, Jonathan, in the middle, he's sitting under a broom tree, the Bible says, And an angel comes and feeds him, wakes him up and says, hey, you got a long journey ahead, bud. You need some nourishment. And he feeds him. And I always tell people this: when you're running from God, when you're quitting, God never will quit on you. In fact, he'll make your lunch for you. He'll give you nourishment while you're quitting on him. But he gets to the cave, and at the mouth of the cave, he's used to the fire and wind and earthquakes. And the Lord, the Bible says, wasn't in those things. The Bible says he was in the still whisper. And he says, Elijah, what are you doing here? And I would ask someone that's quitting right now, watching this, I know maybe we'll never meet. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? You've quit on your marriage. You've quit on your kids. You've given up because someone's words. Why? And then God says to him, go back the way you came. And now I would say that to your audience. Just go back the way you came. I preached this message one time, and a guy named Leonard, I'll never forget him till the day I die. Old man comes walking up to me 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And he said, Pastor, I've never been here before. I said, it's nice to meet you, Leonard. And he said, I'm going back the way I came. I said, well, tell me what that means for you. He said, I'm going back, like you said, out the doors I came in. I'm going back to the car that you said that I drove in. I'm going to get in that car and drive back the opposite way, the way I came in. I'm going to go back to my house the way I came. And I'm going to walk in my house, and I'm going to love it. He's crying, older guy crying, really gets your attention. He's crying, tears in his eyes. He said, I'm going back to love the woman that I said I will love her till death do you part. But until today, I wanted to quit on her because she doesn't know who I am. She's forgotten who I am. But I'm going back because I remember who I am and I remember who she is. And I'm going to go back and love her until death do us part. So we never know what the rest of the book will say if we quit.
That's good. Well, your story is very fascinating. John, I appreciate you hanging out with us here for 45 minutes. Before we go, real quick, tell folks where they can find you, where they can buy the book. Give us all those details. We're going to put it in the description, but just for folks listening in that want to jot it down as a mental note.
Sure. So you go to Amazon. The book is Church of Living Dangerously. You could go to Amazon or any Barnes & Noble, anywhere. Or the best thing is I do a weekly devotional, and I talk like I'm just talking with us, just real simple. And if you go to johnleebishop.com and sign up, there's nothing more than we'll send you this devotional every week. And I would love to have some people sign up and be blessed. It's just, sharing my heart like I've done with you just now.
Awesome.
It's johnleebishop.com. That's it.
Awesome. Well, folks, I'll put that link in the description and a link to the book, to the Amazon as well. John, I want to thank you so much for joining us. It'll be fun to watch your story and get that movie out and watch it with my kids in my living room. So we wish you nothing but success, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, brother. Take care.